Feels like they pushed a button on Shedeur Sanders, right? Like the call came from up top?
This is what Stephen A. Smith is arguing as collusion. I would say when people are confused, and we all are, because this is something we're doing that's really subjective, really unscientific. Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. We do not know what we're doing when it comes to this evaluation, and I am serious about being able to measure a horse's ability to succeed better than whether an NFL prospect is going to succeed.
Dan, do you remember my first ever hit on the Dan Le Batard Show?
Yes.
I thought it was about Goran Dragic.
No. The first ever hit I had, I was driving from Bristol to Boston to go to a game, and there was a player for the Miami Heat who had taken the world by storm. His name was Hassan Whiteside. And Dan Le Batard said, get this, and Sedano says this guy knows basketball. So let's get Sedano's guy on the line. So he calls up. I'm Sedano's guy, and he said, how's this possible? How are all these people evaluating players for a living, and how did they all miss him? How was he in Lebanon in the YMCA? How? And I said, Dan, the kid was an asshole. And you were like, what? Well, I didn't say asshole. I said jackhole because we were on ESPN radio. Yeah. So then I explained, I said, the talent is undeniable, but I told the story from pre-draft where there was a coach that asked them, what do you need to do to get better at the next level? And Hassan Whiteside said nothing. He didn't say anything. He said the answer, nothing. And the coach said, I get it, you're confident, we're all confident, but everyone's working. Everyone's trying to get better. Hell, Kobe Bryant's the best player in the league. He's working every day trying to get better. What do you need to get better at? And Hassan Whiteside said, nothing. Yeah. And so the coach loses his temper and says, oh, so you're just effing perfect, right? And Hassan Whiteside says, pretty much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how you fall in a draft. If that, and I don't know what Shedeur Sanders did or didn't do in his pre-draft interviews, but when you look at the talent, you say, okay, he's got the talent, but then you counterbalance it with A, the record was all right, not great, not awful, but just all right, and then B, like you how you comport yourselves in these situations. They matter. And I would imagine in the NFL world, it matters even more because they really don't like eccentric personalities over there. And so I don't know what he did or said. Maybe it was mild. But I have an idea that when 30 teams pass over you once, or 32 teams pass over you once, twice, 3 times, 4 times,
yeah,
it must have been something that you said that was pretty egregious.
No. It can be and things that you said, but Ryan Leaf was drafted very high, and everyone knew what the problems were, and then became addiction problems on top of that. If you have the talent, the arm talent, Jeff George was an asshole. Everybody knew Jeff George was an asshole. It doesn't matter if you actually have the arm talent. The thing that makes it really hard with Shedeur Sanders, a number of things make it hard. Took more sacks than any other college quarterback. Now, I happen to know that that's because his offensive line stunk, but I cannot untangle all of the do-si-doing and running around in circles that he tried to do, extending plays with slow throw times, and he's not Kyler Murray, and he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not that kind of athlete. So you have that over there. You also have what Amin is saying, which is you can't be that cocky if everyone who's interviewing you knows you're not that good. Like that, the coaches were not surprised by him dropping in that draft. But to me, the part that is most worth examining on what happened here is why the disconnect between how and why so many people in the media were telling us that this was going to be someone who was drafted second or third as a quarterback to falling into the 5th round. Why the disconnect between what the media was telling us and what actually happened that ended up with all of the experts being confused. Coaches were not surprised that he fell. Everyone was surprised that he fell that much.
I mean, did you see? I mean, they're just reports and not confirmed, but how some of the meetings went, because like they were pretty comical. Like, and we don't know that this is real, but the reports were that he went in, he had headphones on, he had music playing the entire time. They were around his neck, so they weren't over his ears. He had an entourage come with him. They asked him things like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And he'd say things like, "I'm going to be the mayor." And then they would just kind of like his entourage would laugh at him. Supposedly the one with the Giants went very poorly, even though Dable came out. I think the thing, beyond everything else is there's only a handful of teams that needed a starting quarterback, right? And once Pittsburgh elected not to get him, really once the Giants went with Jackson Dart, it became a thing of, okay, well, he could be Pittsburgh, maybe next round. Then Pittsburgh didn't get him, and then it became a fall. And when you didn't bring him in to be the starting quarterback, then every team who he either interviewed with or didn't interview with, or his dad said he wouldn't want to play for, or whatever, how much are you going to invest in someone to be your backup quarterback that you don't really know what you're going to get if he's tanking the interviews?
It wasn't just the physical limitations. It wasn't just the entourage. It was that if you draft Shedeur Sanders, you're drafting Dion and all that circus.
The Hall of Famer, Dion?
The Hall of Famer,
the Hall of Famer who's better than any of your coaches at football.
Yeah, but you're not drafting Dion to come coach your team or play for your team.
You're
drafting
second
Dion
guess
in a LeVar Ball role.
All right, be a leader. Be a tough leader. And can you handle Dion or not? Like, you can't handle a dad, coach?
But, Dan, you're asking for, the Giants, for example, where Daboll is about to lose his job to gamble his future career on Shedeur Sanders. And if they butted heads in the interview, why would he do that?
And then this is true in every sport. We'll put up with as much as your talent dictates. Yeah. He's good. Is he great? That kind of story good? Bringing the headphones. That's my point. There are guys he's a hell of a player, but it's if you come in acting like that, you better be the LeBron James of this. And I think he's not the LeBron James of college football last year. He wasn't. So it has to be commiserate on some level, and especially in that sport and especially at that position where they're this person's supposed to be a leader. Even if he is great, how can I have a leader who comes and makes a mockery of things? Again, that's allegedly because we don't really know what happened. The funny thing, Billy, of all the stories I heard, the Daboll one is the one that sounds the realest. All the other ones sound like they're just trumped up kind of.
I mean, it's all speculation, right? Because none of the teams are going to confirm any of this. Because what's the point of it when you're going through a draft and
they'll do it? They'll do it anonymously.
Well, but even that, there's no point. Every team but one didn't take him, right? And he ended up landing in a pretty good spot for him. It's a team that some people speculated he was going to be at anyways, and him falling to the fifth round.
That's not a good spot for him.
That is a good spot for him.
No, it's a terrible spot for him.
Okay.
It's a quarterback room that's got 4 other quarterbacks
Yeah, that he can beat out for a starting job, Dan. Deshaun Watson is not going to be there. Joe Flacco is injured every time. There's 2 rookie quarterbacks. He could win a starting job. He could get significant playing time
The
this year.
reason it's not a good spot is because you heard his father say, if he goes to Cleveland, we're going to Eli the situation. It's not where we want to be.
Okay, but his father, it was proven, didn't have that power.
I'm just telling you that it's not a good spot when that's how they're viewing it.
I mean, that quote is old too. That wasn't from yesterday or over the weekend. So I mean,
and you guys are going to have some trouble naming Brown skill position players that aren't Chubb, who's broken, or Njoku, who is shirtless.